This is Diana Stott, facing charges of first-degree murder of not one, but two family members in Springfield, Missouri. Now, she seemed like your average mom from Springfield, working as a nurse, attending church every Sunday, and had what most would consider to be the perfect family. But when Diana Stott's family members kept dying under strange circumstances, people started asking questions. How did her husband, son, and her daughter all get the same mysterious illness? And more importantly, why was Diana planning a vacation as her daughter fought for her life in the hospital? Easter Sunday, 2012 should have been a happy day for the Stott family. But instead it became the first day of a dark mystery that would shock the entire Springfield community. It all started when 61-year-old Mark Stott, Diane's husband, died after having 3 consecutive seizures. The authorities thought this was natural since he drank a lot, especially when they saw blood around his mouth. Plus, Diana had told him Mark had been weak lately and wouldn't go see a doctor. But then just 5 months later, police rushed to the Stott home yet again. This time, Diana's 26-year-old son, Sean, wasn't breathing. And just like his dad, Sean had a weird ring of dried blood around his mouth. Diana said he'd been sick with flu symptoms for weeks. And again, doctors concluded that he died from health problems he already had. But when Diana's 24-year-old daughter, Sarah, was rushed to the hospital on June 9, 2013, what really shocked detectives was Diana's behavior. While her daughter's fighting for her life, Diana's out shopping, laughing with friends, and even planning a Florida vacation. Now, in the interrogation room, Diana showed little concern for her critically ill daughter. Instead, she nervously laughed and worried about herself.
I know she had been not sleeping as good as she's been in the past, but other than that, I hadn't really noticed much change. So yeah, it makes me question, it's like, well, did she do something? Mm-hmm. And if she did, I'd sure as heck like to know what so I could prevent it again.
And it gets even stranger. When asked what might have poisoned her daughter, Diana joked about household cleaners.
I can't see her taking soap. Yuck. The general, everyday cleaner. I have some of that.
What would that be?
What's the name of it? Lysol?
Okay.
I know I have that, but...
What Diana didn't know was that the police already retested the tissue samples from her husband and son, and they found something the initial autopsies missed: antifreeze, which was later found at her home. Now, as a nurse, Diana had the medical knowledge to choose a poison that standard toxicology screenings wouldn't catch. Detective Neil McCamus cornered her with a strategy that finally broke her down. He appealed to her religious beliefs, telling her that confession was the path to forgiveness.
You have to understand that, Diana. You've got to tell me the whole truth, because you know that I already know. But you've got to tell me how all this started, when it started, why it started. Because you're going to want people to see that you're remorseful and that, you're sorry for what you did. And that you've asked for forgiveness.
After hours of denial, Diana finally cracked under the pressure, and in one particularly chilling moment, she admitted what she'd done.
And I didn't know what else to do. I really didn't.
But here's where things take an even darker turn. Looks like Diana hadn't acted alone. Her favorite daughter, Rachel, helped plan and carry out these murders as well. When police searched their home, they found Rachel's journal with entries predicting her father's and brother's deaths a year before they happened. At first, Rachel said that these were just dreams, but when confronted with her own writing, she admitted the truth.
So you said you'd been having some dreams about them dying. And you told your mother about this. Mm-hmm. What did you tell your mother?
That it would be quick. That it'd be easy.
In court, the full horror of the Stott murders unraveled. Prosecutors reveal that Diana had grown fed up with her unemployed husband's drinking and tired of caring for her autistic son Sean, whom she described as, quote, more than a bother, more than a pest. Rachel testified that her sister Sarah had no purpose in life, and they were planning on killing Diana's youngest daughter next. Luckily, however, they were caught before they could go ahead with their final plan. The court was tense as the judge prepared to deliver the sentence. Diana showed no emotion, while Rachel finally seemed to grasp the enormity of what she'd done. Sarah, who survived the poisoning but suffered permanent brain and organ damage, faced her mother at sentencing.
I forgive my mom for what she did to me. But she not only took away my brother, but she took away my lifestyle and motherhood and my independence.
The judge's verdict was severe. Diana would spend the rest of her life in prison without any possibility of parole. Rachel, on the other hand, received a life with a chance of parole after 42 years for testifying against her mother. A church-going nurse and her daughter, who systematically poisoned their family members, showed zero remorse in court. But what happens when neglect takes an even more horrific form? This is Seth Welch and Tatiana Fasari, facing charges of first-degree murder in Kent County, Michigan. Now, they seem like your average farming couple from this state, growing their tomatoes, selling honey, and raising their 3 young children. But behind their Black Acre Farm sign was a house of horrors, where their 10-month-old daughter, Mary Ann, slowly starved to death in a moldy crib. On August 2nd, 2018, 10-month-old Mary Ann Welch lay dead in her crib for hours before her father, Seth Welch, finally called 911.
How long ago did you find this child?
It's about an hour and a half. I was waiting. I called my lawyer first thing to ask, what's the next thing I could do. And they said, wait till they're here to call, the police and get that going.
But instead of immediately reporting his daughter's death, he first called his parents, who he referred to as lawyers during the call. When officers arrived at the family's home, they discovered a nightmarish scene. Mary Ann's body was so severely malnourished that paramedics couldn't tell her actual age. Her crib mattress was soaked in urine and covered in toxic black mold. The home was infested with fleas, and evidence of mice droppings was found throughout. Deputy Don Tenbrink, who searched the house, found only 1 container of baby food and no formula. It was filthy, he said. When detectives interviewed Tatiana, she tried to blame Seth for preventing her from getting medical help. Interrogators were shocked by Tatiana's negligence.
Tatiana, I'm going to be quite honest with you right now, okay? One parent to another, right? And I'm going to try and control my emotions, all right? I've been to a child investigator school, and I've seen photos and images of children that have been malnourished. And I'm telling you right now, this is the worst thing I've ever seen.
The interrogator couldn't hold back on his emotions.
It put tears in our eyes when we walked in there. It was that obvious.
But the true motives behind this horrific neglect began to emerge during Seth's interview.
I don't trust the medical system so much as other people. I know how they work, and I know they're in business, and that healthy people don't make them any money.
He told investigators he didn't believe in doctors nor vaccinations, citing religious reasons.
It changes the way that we do things a lot differently than most other people.
But his twisted beliefs went far beyond religion. He said,
"It didn't seem smart that you would save people who aren't the fittest."
He then elaborated.
"If evolution believes in survival of the fittest, why are we vaccinating everybody? Shouldn't we just let the weak off and let the strong survive?"
On January 10th, 2020, the most dramatic moment in court came during Seth's trial. A juror later described how the photographs of Mary Ann's condition had affected the jury.
"It was even worse, as there was virtually nothing left of her."
The prosecutor tore apart the defense's claims that Seth and Tatiana were just incompetent parents. She pointed out that while Mary Ann starved to weighing only 8 pounds, Seth appeared clearly overweight in police interviews. The jury took less than an hour and a half to get to their verdict. Watch as the judge finally reveals their fate.
They're alleging that you murdered one Mary Welch. That is a charge called homicide felony murder. It is life without parole. The second offense that you're both charged with is called child abuse in the first degree, where they're alleging you knowingly or intentionally caused serious physical harm to a child. They're talking about this Mary Welch.
It's almost as if they can't wrap their minds around their own actions. The judge's words were laced with disgust.
This is a tragic case from where I'm sitting. I'm not sure that I'll ever understand what these parents were thinking or doing to, I guess I would have to say, literally watch their child.
Seth Welch was found guilty of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison without parole. And after several months, in October 2021, Tatiana Fusari also received her verdict after a 3-hour jury deliberation. She too was found guilty of first-degree murder and first-degree child abuse. These disgusting parents showed no remorse in court. But what happens when a father decides his children are better off dead than living with their own mother? This is Michael Sykes, facing 2 counts of first-degree murder charges, 1 count of attempted murder, as well as murder in the second degree for stabbing his girlfriend and her 3 children. Michael Sykes lived with his girlfriend and her 3 little girls in a Staten Island hotel. But on February 10, 2016, he suspected his girlfriend was texting an ex, and his jealousy turned deadly. The night before, he'd stolen her phone during an argument at the Ramada Inn, where they were staying as part of a homeless shelter program. Then, the next morning, his paranoia reached a breaking point. He grabs a kitchen knife and viciously attacks Rebecca and her 3 young daughters, 1-year-old Sienna, 4-month-old Maya, and 2-year-old Miracle. When police arrive at the hotel room, they find a scene of unimaginable horror. Rebecca and little Ziana were pronounced dead at the scene. Baby Maya died later at the hospital, and miraculously, 2-year-old Miracle was the only one who survived this frenzy attack, though she did suffer serious injuries. After the attack, Sykes fled the scene and remained on the run for days. New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio gave a public statement asking the public to stay vigilant.
We need the public's help immediately finding him. I am convinced we will bring him to justice very quickly, but we do want the public's help right away. We know the identity, and you'll hear from the commissioner and chief on that.
What followed was a massive manhunt, and he was finally captured on February 13, 2016. At his trial in 2019, the prosecution painted a clear picture of the calculated nature of the attack. Security footage shows Sykes entering the hotel room at 8:50 a.m. and leaving just 9 minutes later, having stabbed all 4 victims in that short time. Rebecca's sister takes the stand, her voice breaking, as she addressed the court about the devastating impact on their family.
The request of the family is that the maximum penalty for the crime for which the defendant was convicted be imposed.
Throughout this trial, Sykes showed little emotion. He occasionally shakes his head during testimony, otherwise remaining stone-faced as the prosecution presented the gruesome details of his crimes. But the most dramatic moment came when the medical examiner testified about the extent of the injuries. Rebecca had been stabbed 40 times, little Ziana 11, and baby Maya, his own daughter, 9 times. The jury visibly recoiled at the photo showing the wounds on the tiny children. And as the case neared its conclusion, the judge addressed Sykes directly.
You failed as a husband, you failed as a father, you failed as a human being. In my opinion, based on what you did, you do not deserve to ever see the light of day.
As the judge prepares to give the sentence, the tension in the courtroom is reaching its peak.
Murder in the first degree, for killing Ziana Cutler and the others named therein, is a sentence of life without parole.
As the sentence was read, Sykes finally showed emotion. His shoulders slumped, and he bowed his head. The judge added additional consecutive sentences for the attempted murder of Miracle, ensuring that even if parole laws changed in the future, Sykes would never walk free again. Today, the only survivor of this attack, Miracle Cutler, lives with her relatives. She bears both physical and emotional scars from that day, but her family says her name reflects that story. She is truly a miracle. Now, while Michael Sykes destroyed an entire family in minutes of rage, our next case is going to show you what happens when a mother's desperation turns into a calculated plot to eliminate her own flesh and blood. This is Mitchell Blair, a mother of 4 from Detroit, Michigan, facing first-degree murder charges for killing her children.
For real? You! Everybody want to know yes I did!
To neighbors, she seemed strict but loving. Now, behind closed doors, she was torturing her own children in unimaginable ways. And when police discovered what was inside her freezer during a routine eviction, they were left horrified. On March 24th, 2015, court bailiffs arrive at Mitchell Blair's Detroit apartment to serve an eviction notice. She'd fallen behind on rent. But when no one answered, they entered and began removing her belongings. And as they cleared out the apartment, one bailiff made a shocking discovery in the freezer: the frozen bodies of 2 children. Police quickly identified the bodies as Blair's children, 13-year-old Stoney Blair and 9-year-old Stephen Barry. Even more disturbing, medical examiners would tell us that Stoney had been dead since May 2013 and Stephen since August 2012. For years, the bodies had been hidden in this freezer, while Blair continued living in that apartment with her 2 surviving children. After a citywide manhunt, police arrested Mitchell Blair the same day. During questioning, Blair proudly confessed and expressed no remorse, but the true extent of her crimes emerged only during court proceedings. It turns out that Blair had systematically tortured her children over the years. She would beat them with extension cords, burned them with irons, starved them, and forced them to drink Windex. Stephen died after being burnt with scalding water, beaten, and tied up in a window for days. Stoney, too, would die from strangulation after being beaten and starved.
Both had been slapped in the face. Both of them had chipped teeth.
But the most chilling moment in court came when Mitchell Blair insisted on making a statement.
For real?
Mother, listen.
No matter how much you lie or how your lawyers lie.
You done, Mother? Listen to me.
Blair repeatedly interrupted proceedings to declare that her children deserved to die for allegedly abusing her youngest son, though investigators found no evidence to support this claim.
Man, I don't regret none of this. I don't regret any of it. With my son, that's my baby. It's no way.
As the prosecutors presented their case, Blair nodded in agreement, seemingly proud of what she'd done. When the children's fathers took the stand, Blair's outbursts became increasingly volatile. The judge, visibly disturbed by her behavior and lack of remorse, delivered a powerful rebuke before sentencing.
As a mother, one of your primary responsibilities was to protect your kid. And in that respect, you failed in the worst possible way.
True, that's why I'm asking for life.
I know. Thankfully, that house of horrors that you created is no longer in existence.
With the tensions high, the judge delivers the sentence, and Blair, still showing no remorse, seemed almost pleased with herself.
Stephen made him drink Windex. So yes, I made that boy drink Windex.
Okay, I'm just trying to clarify the record.
Her final words in court were unbelievable.
I don't feel no remorse for the death of them demons.
Okay.
The surviving children were placed in the care of relatives, left to process the unimaginable trauma they endured and witnessed. And psychologists said that they would require extensive therapy for years to come. A mother who tortured, murdered, and froze her children proudly admitted her crimes in court. But now what happens when a father becomes so enraged that he executes all 3 of his sons in a single afternoon? This is Chad Doerman, facing 3 first-degree murder charges for killing his 3 sons. On a sunny day in June 2023, this man does something so horrific that police officers call it the most monstrous act they'd ever witnessed.
Chad, I trusted you with my life.
In less than 5 minutes, he executed all 3 of his young sons. June 15th, 2023, in Monroe Township, Ohio, emergency dispatchers receive a frantic 911 call from a neighbor.
911, where's your emergency? There's a girl running down the street saying that her stepfather is everyone in her family.
Chad Doerman returned home early, armed with a gun. He gathered his wife and 3 sons in the primary bedroom. Doerman shot and killed all 3 of his sons. His stepdaughter only narrowly managed to escape the massacre, running for her life as her brothers were executed one by one. That's when a neighbor spotted the terrified girl sprinting down the street with blood visible on her clothes and decided to call the police.
What was happening? I asked her to get in the car with me, and she said she couldn't leave her family.
Body cam footage shows what went down when first responders arrived at the family home. They find a scene of unimaginable horror. 3 boys, ages 3, 4, and 7, lay dead in the yard, each shot multiple times. Their mother and sister were hysterical, while their father, Chad Doerman, was sitting calmly on the porch, waiting for them to make their arrest. Despite the carnage inside, he surrendered without any resistance, showing no emotion as police placed him in handcuffs.
Now! Stand up! Stand the up!
Go ahead and fly whenever any inside.
Now, during questioning, he claimed that he couldn't remember what had happened that day, but the evidence alone was enough for prosecutors to proceed with the trial, even without an admission of guilt. In court, this pattern of complete lack of remorse continued.
And they trust more than any other person on earth, the person they rely upon to keep them safe from harm. He was their world, he was their guardian, and he executed them in cold blood. We know that from his admission.
Investigators then exposed the most chilling aspect of this case. Chad was actually planning to kill his sons since October 2022. That's nearly 8 months of planning.
One of the most monstrous, craven, cowardly acts that will ever be our misfortunes.
Prosecutors described a man who carefully crafted a plan to rid himself of his own children. He hunted his kids down one by one, making sure each boy was dead before moving on to the next. The prosecutor detailed how the 7-year-old had tried to run away, hiding in a nearby field, but Doerman tracked him down and executed him last.
And they trust more than any other person on earth, the person they rely upon to keep them safe from harm. He was their world, he was their guardian.
As these details emerged, several jurors openly cried. Doerman, however, showed no reaction. He sat there emotionless, occasionally whispering to his attorney but never looking at the photographs of his sons displayed in court. When Doerman's attorney spoke, he attempted to suggest mental illness may have played a role, but the judge wasn't having it. The judge denies bail, declaring Doerman a danger to society. The prosecutor requested and received a special expedited trial date, citing the extreme nature of the crimes. And finally, this is the moment Chad Doerman learned he would never walk free again. Initially facing the death penalty, Doerman ultimately took a plea deal. In the courtroom, the judge asked how he pleaded. The single word, guilty, was repeated 5 times, once for each count, 3 for aggravated murder and 2 for felonious assault against his ex-wife Laura and stepdaughter Alexis, who were injured trying to save those poor boys. During the sentencing, Laura and Alexis's victim impact statements left the courtroom in tears.
I looked up to you more than anyone. I saw you as my dad, not just a stepdad, because it hurts to know I will never get to experience another day with my 3 brothers, or to make any memories anymore, because their innocent lives were taken away so quickly and horribly by their own father. I was injured that day, fighting with every ounce of my body to just make it stop. I struggle every day, knowing I was not successful in doing so. And now I have to live with this and wonder what more I could have done to save them. I would do anything to push them on the swing, cover them up one more time, and hear their little ways of saying, I love you.
But when given the opportunity to repent, Doerman declined. For each murder count, Chad Doerman was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, plus additional time for the assaults. And while many in the community expressed outrage that Doerman avoided the death penalty, his ex-wife Laura supported the plea deal.
I'm in full agreement with how the criminal case was resolved. Having a guarantee that he will spend the rest of his life behind bars is what is best for my family.